What am I looking for?
What are we looking for?
Real floppy disks, like the real thin ones, paper thin.
Dancing with Toby in his garage.
To work with people from Halt and Catch Fire.
Yes, all of you, all the actors, all the crew, love you all.
I'm trying to get period cars, but like a lot of shitty period cars.
To find someone with whom you kind of share taste of like, oh, this is the good version of this?
Yes.
Is actually incredibly rare.
We start with 3 hives in your apiary. Yeah, we're so excited about that.
Chris scripted a specific gameplay in Mario Kart.
The Atari, the game systems, that really brought things back.
Some of the guys, like, would be sitting around in like the living room, I think is where one of the Ataris was, and they'd be like, what is Dig Dug?
By season 2, you know, I tried to bring the camera to have more movement. So like we rented a crane for the whole show.
We couldn't wait to read a script. When those new scripts came out, we couldn't wait to find out what happened.
Halt and Catch Fire?
Halt and Catch Fire.
Halt and Catch Fire.
Halt and Catch Fire.
Halt and Catch Fire. You know, there's something so beautiful about a show that is organic and real, and it's not so famous and overproduced that it loses its charm. You know, you're all like, and Halt and Catch Fire always felt like we were working like on the best kept secret in Hollywood.
I love the show. I love it so much. I love this. I love the Chris's. I love the writing team, both teams that were put together over the course of the show. I love the cast. It's just incredible. Everything. It was just like such a beautiful story. Like I love what it's about. Like I love that it's about creative partnership. I love that it's about the creative process. I love that it is about the people and about the found family, sort of found workplace family. Like we all spend so much of our lives at work. It was just a pleasure to examine that. Like it felt so worthy and such a good use of time and effort and contemplation that was really meaningful to me.
This was kind of the real first professional endeavor where it was like, it was everything. You know, I wanted it to work. I wanted it to be the best it could be, right? And so you just have to care.
It's sort of the little engine that could, you know, it was never a big, big gorgeous hit. It just was a show that was so critically lauded, and all of my smart friends really loved it. So I just said, oh, there's something, we are connecting with people. And it was, I met both Chris Cantwell and Chris Rogers through it, and they not only are the wonderful writers who I continue to work with, but they just become really, really good friends as well.
I was aware from the first day of shooting that this was a different show. This wasn't like a lot of shows I've done, and something special was happening. And I told myself, you have to be really aware of this every day you're shooting. And every day you're shooting, this has to be the most important thing.
And to speak back to, like, will everyone get along? Everyone got along famously. I mean, Mackenzie, Scoot, and Lee all lived together for a few seasons at least. We were all very close and got to know each other really well. And same with the creators and the producers and Jeff Freilich and Melissa Bernstein. Like, it was just on. And then the camera ops and the DPs, like, everybody got along very, very well. And all the coders that worked in Mutiny. It was a really harmonious vibe. So it really paralleled kind of what was happening on the show in a way. It was like everyone was one big group, and it was almost like a very free, liberating feeling. It was like didn't have marks on the floor. A lot of it's handheld, the show. So you kind of just like did whatever. And everyone was really open to that. There was a real energy to the show. And that was probably led by Chris Rogers and Chris Canwell, because they were quite young too when it started, and everyone was just really invigorated. And AMC would come, and I became good friends with some of the people at AMC, and they were young and excited too, but then they had people who were veterans who were excited as well. So it was a really cool time, especially for AMC, because they were just coming off Breaking Bad and Mad Men, and it was kind of like a time where you could really take chances because they'd already like hit their home runs. And so it's very fond for me. I think about it often.
My biggest memory of that was it was such a great collaborative process, especially on the pilot. It felt like making a movie that was just a small little movie.
Halt and Catch Fire was really intimate, and we spent a lot of time together off camera, partially because no one was an Atlanta native. And so everybody was sort of uprooted from their lives and someplace where, you don't know anybody, you don't know even the city. So you're sort of exploring it together, or all getting dinner at so-and-so's place after, we would do our own table reads every time we got an episode.
We somehow caught lightning in a bottle. Everything about this was terrific, which is how we were able to make it as good as it was.
I learned a lot on this particular show because it was a beautiful show visually, I think. I learned how to tell story with image.
But to come on a set where they want everybody's input and they want it to feel organic and they want it to feel like a scene. They want it to feel like something that's really happening, as opposed to, well, we just got to get this on film. I remember being really taken aback by that.
That show is so thoughtfully and heartfully crafted. Like, everybody involved was so good, and like the production itself was run so smoothly. Like, it allowed for a lot of relaxation and play and like focus, like when you're on set, because you can be calm. Like, you can trust that the team has kind of got everything covered.
It was a show that I don't think got the love it deserved when it was on the air. And there's something deeply, and I think one of the reasons that we kind of loved it as much as we did is we weren't getting the affirmation. So we had to kind of give it to each other. And so in a weird way, I think it was almost good for the show, because we had to, we just all had to acknowledge that we were there because we loved it. And that was all we got.
Writing, the writers were so good, the creators, the showrunner, the experience was so good. I feel like I always refer to it as my master class.
It was really fun and fluid, and I don't know, it was a very creative, fulfilling experience because I didn't feel like there were rules. The rules were to not have it feel generic. The rules were to have it feel like an indie film.
Seeing like the camera blocking, and like it was so cool. We got to like sit behind the camera. Like, they would let us like do the slate, and they would let us like see how the camera functions and works. And like, we seriously got to be a part of every part of the set.
And then we just took this ride together, which shaped us.
Yeah, so it's like there's really only one person in the world who's had this exact experience, and it's you.
Yeah.
The Chris's and Melissa, I think that they had this vision for the show that really, because they were so generous with allowing you as a creative to be creative. Look what came of it,
Luckily, Chris and Chris, who were the showrunners, were just absolutely the greatest guys to work for in the entire world. So it didn't feel... I've worked for other people where coming in on a season 4 would be panic-inducing and a nightmare. But working for those guys, even though like we had a card stacked against us and figuring out where everything was, they made it feel like we had been there the whole time. They were just very inviting, very gracious people to work for.
I forget if it was which of the Chris's it was, but they were talking to the other coder and they were like, man, it's so cool that you and William were able to come and be a part of this today, and like it was just cool. And like looking back, like that means a lot, that like the people that were in charge of everything still knew who you were, and that they knew that you mattered, on the set.
The Chris's were Chris Rogers and Chris Cantwell. It was their first thing also. Like, they had never been showrunners before. And so that's what I think was really interesting about this show. And part of what made it really special was everybody, including the people at the top, were really trying to figure out what the show was.
I just want to shout out the Chris's for writing me into their show twice. They didn't have to do that. And it was the scene I did in season 2 where Dave gets the promotion and Justin is also getting a promotion. There's a little line in there after I say my thing about Telnet, and it's like, Cameron and Donna give each other a look, give a mouse a cookie. And that is the Chris's talking about me.
Aw.
And it's like, yeah, I was the squeaky little mouse that just wanted to be in the show, and now they got to put me in.
Jonathan Lisco, from everything I was able to glean from Chris, and Chris was a wonderful tutor and mentor for them. And by the time they took over the show, I kept commenting to them throughout the year. I couldn't believe this was their first year running the show, because I'd run a show. I know how hard the job is. I thought they were doing an extraordinary job of just basically of inclusiveness, of collaboration, of a wonderful spirit in the room. They were just great. They were probably two of my favorite bosses to work for ever. They were just really good people and good bosses, and just ran a very, I'm trying to think of the term I would use. It was a very kind of calm, welcoming, enjoyable room to be in. And they really set the tone for that. A showrunner will always set the tone for the room, and they set a wonderful tone.
When the guys at the top are calm and friendly and just taking everything in stride and supportive and encouraging, it makes a big difference. It means everybody else on the project behaves that way as well.
The Chris's are like the best showrunners ever, and they are so helpful and so involved and understand the character, but were able to give me a lot of information, but still allowed me to have that sort of artistic freedom.
Chris Cantwell, Chris Rogers, always were accessible to us. We could call at any given time and ask them about character background.
Writing, like Chris's writing, they did a phenomenal job, like just creating the show. And also like just the company itself, they put together an excellent company, from like actors who were cast, the people who worked on it. Like it was just such a great group. And I think that's something which is always, it's what stayed with me.
And when I think about Halt and Catch Fire, the Chris's, the creators, they were young, like when they sold the show, which was pretty cool. So that was inspiring.
They're just like good-hearted. They care about being good bosses. They care about creating a really collaborative, loving, supportive, kind, safe environment.
It was just great. All I can say is it working with people I had already known, getting a shot to do something dramatic. As you can tell from my credits, I usually am only in comedy. You kind of get typecast in this business. I will always be in a debt of gratitude to Chris Cantwell and Chris Rogers, who actually is my neighbor. He lives 4 houses down from me. And he's a very handsome man and is in incredible shape, runs all the time. I know people want to know that.
My first job in scripted was as a writer's assistant on a Greg Berlanti show. And one of the writers on that show was Jonathan Lisco. He was an upper level writer at the time. And I don't even know if he remembers saying this to me, but he said something at it was like a low point. We knew the show we were on was going to get canceled. And I was thinking, am I ever going to make it? And it was late one night in the writer's room. And he just turned to me and offhand, he said, "You're conscientious. You work really hard. You're really smart. If you've got the goods, I think you're going to make it as a TV writer." And that just encouragement, lifted me at such a pivotal moment. So I've always had a soft spot for Jonathan Lisco. So when he called me a few years later and said, "Hey, do you want to meet on this new show that I'm show running with the Chris's?" I'm like, yes, I would die to work for Jonathan Lisco. And that's how he brought me in.
Now I look back at the time that I spent with Mark and Melissa, and I spent most of it with Melissa, as the most remarkable period that I think I've spent in the 50 years I've been in this business.
Well, I did work a little bit with Melissa Bernstein, who was the person who probably got the show made. I mean, I think she was betting on the two Chris's, and I think that was a sort of a career risk for her. It turned out brilliantly, I think. She was a power behind the scenes. She's obviously not an actor, and she wasn't a director, but she was I think, instrumental in giving them the authority to do the show the way they wanted to do it.
Everybody was really, it was really a blessing, the whole thing. The AMC was great. Everybody was great.
And I have to also hand it to AMC, who's a kind of an unsung hero, because the show never got great ratings. And yet they recognized the value of it.
There was so much sort of that trust, that circular trust that the writers were letting us, without us trying, letting us inform them about the characters, and we were letting them inform us about how to play it and how to be these characters. And that circle continued from the first day to the last day. And it was such a testament to Chris and Chris that they hadn't done a show before, and they were so open to this whole thing. It was really a wonderful thing, and I haven't had anything like that since. I mean, it's been a human highlight, and it's been also a career highlight. And as far as how you want to spend your days creatively working with people, that's some of the best stuff I've ever done.
It was really fun when the drafts would come in because you couldn't wait to see what someone had written, and we all had slightly different voices and strengths and weaknesses, and then we all would help each other.
As a group, we gelled immediately. I mean, it just, it was just like, everybody was playing a different instrument, but it all sounded good together, and it worked.
And I love Lisa. She's a brilliant writer. She's a wonderful and hilarious person and a friend. And in a way, like, we knew each other from a few months in the writer's room, but you really get to know somebody in a different, more intimate way when you share a script. And so it was bonding. This was a bonding experience. I'm happy to report. We loved the story. So we were excited to get to write another episode, and we were totally happy to get to write it together.
And I have to give lots of credit to the writer, Lisa Albert, because the scene, it was on the page. I mean, we took it a step further, obviously, but the inspiration for that scene, it was the writer. I mean, it was really just so great.
It was really quite kind of interesting to see the way the writers turned real things in slightly different contexts, put them into different people's mouths and twisted the characters around. And so all the episodes are based on something that really happened in the industry. And it was a lot of fun to do that.
People, bared their souls in the room and shared lots of like heartbreaking memories and stuff like that. And it all ended up in the soup of the show.
I guarantee you every writer you talk to will say this: best writer's room we've ever been in. Like, just the most loving, supportive, kind, collaborative. It will never be that good again.
Every moment on this show in the writer's room was joyful. I've rarely been in a writer's room with a group that was so funny, supportive, smart, where it felt like, as Jonathan Lisko would say, we are a collective brain as opposed to a bunch of egos fighting to get their pitch. It really felt like we had these communal brainstorming and breaking of story that was just so collaborative, and that is so magical. And I just want to say that it really was an absolute, and I give all the credit to the Chris's and Lisko for building this writer's room of a staff that we just had each other's back.
Mark Lafferty, the writer, I think he's like one of my favorite writers I've ever worked with, for sure. All the writers on that show are really special.
What a dream, this show. I mean, I'm sure you've gotten this from everyone. Like, all of us just, it was magic. It was, I love these people. I would throw myself in front of a train for any single one of them. It's such a blessing to have been a part of it, and truly the best creative experience of my life.
Like, it was just a murderer's row of writers. And I knew, and they were like generous, human, lovely people. And I thought, okay, this could be one of the greatest experiences of my life. And the creators, they call them the Chris's, I'm sure you've heard that, Chris Rogers and Chris Cantwell, they were so, they were brand new as showrunners and as creators. This is the first thing that they had done. And they had brought in John Lisko, who had run Southland for 5 years, who was just a genius. Like, it was this incredible meld of people.
It just was such an elegant example of how women
in power structures can coexist.
Sometimes you come across episodes of TV as an editor where you're like, oh my God, this is such a slog to get it up, to get it to like come together, you know, to get the everything to work, you know, because sometimes it just doesn't. But for this, I think there was just a Midas touch that came from the writing, started with the writing, and then the directing, the shooting that came to me. And it just felt like, as you watched it, there were just these natural moments where you're like, I have to cut here.
I guess at the end of the day, it's such a character-driven show rooted in, you know, mostly those 4 characters, you know, and it doesn't revolve really around like dragons or armies or external things. So we can kind of change the wrapping and the setting and the alliances, but as long as they're still them in a way that feels consistent and real, I mean, that's the wonderful thing about having a show that's kind of not, you know, not moved by guns and kind of those external mechanisms, is you always have a north. If you're just going like, well, what would the character really do? And I think that's what was beautiful, is like the deeper you get, the longer you've known these people, and so it's easier to drive, you know.
Yeah. When we were shooting, I had no idea that they were like so innovative in their storytelling, that they were like, we are ripping out the foundation every season, right? They go like, nope, not that again. We're actually moving on to this, and we're moving on to this, and to tell like a completely different, you know, to start from kind of scratch every season.
And Jeff was so sweet and sat with me for maybe about a half an hour and just kind of talked about grief and loss, and you know, just was really truly quite literally a shoulder to cry on.
One of the things I really admired about Jeff Freilich is he would be on set scrutinizing everything for detail. And this show was so important that we got the details right, with the period, with the computer stuff. But even really small things, like there was a scene where Gordon was cooking spaghetti for the family, and Jeff came by and he said, that pot's not big enough. He's cooking for 4 people. Got to get a bigger pot. And that seems insignificant, but that's to have the lived reality of the Clark house, those little things, you know, he was on top of all of that. And there was another scene where Donna goes out in the garage and she's playing electric piano, and kind of reliving her youth. And I noticed that the way they had the electric piano set up, plugged in, hooked up to the amp and everything, being a musician, I was like, that's not right. And I just told Jeff, you know, this is so insignificant, but any piano musician that sees this is going to say that's not right. And he's like, well, how would you do it? And we talked about it, and he brought out the props department and they changed it. And, you know, I was standing there with him, and one of the ADs came up to us and told me, get off set. And he goes, no, we're working here. And for like a split second, he made me feel like I was helping him produce a little piece of the scene. And I mean, that moment was so meaningful to me. It's like, this is what I want to be doing. And, you know, he's letting me feel like I'm doing that.
And I will say also, female directors on that show were incredible. I mean, whether it was Karen Kusama, Daisy, oh my gosh,
Mayer, Von Schuyler Mayer.
Yes, her, yes, amazing. Kimberly Pierce, Reed Morano. I mean, it was like just leading the pack in terms of just great women who were. So I was always, you know, as an actress coming onto a set, I also was a little bit of a Donna to the Melissa Bernsteins and the directors who were leading the leadership roles with such panache.
When Juan Campanella and I met and started having dinner together, we're contemporaries. You know, there was a camaraderie between the two of us, and plus we were the ones there all the time at the beginning.
Well, Daisy Von Schuyler Mayer really does love me, because she kept putting me in every shot, and she gave me my first line ever. I actually ran into her at the New Beverly back in 2019, and she remembered me, and I was like, thank you so much.
In Mira's case, I never really quite got what she was doing while she was shooting it, but she had a very strong sense of purpose, and her attitude was so relaxed and calm and confident, and the actors went with it. She was a wonderful actors director. I mean, you couldn't get those performances if you didn't nurture those performances as a director. But when I saw it cut together, it was like watching a jigsaw puzzle that you poured on the ground and went, I can't do that. And then when you saw it, it was like, wow, that was there, you know.
Jake was amazing and guiding us and just having everyone feel like included and engaged and bringing some necessary life to that scene, because it's a super fun and crazy scene, and he definitely brought it together.
You know, and then we had great directors like John Emil. I mean, we literally,
oh my God, the directors
on the show were ridiculous. They were the who's who of directors, but we were always involved from top to bottom. It was a collaborative team of filmmakers. And, you know, in the end, that's what film is. It's one of the very few, very collaborative arts.
Working with Daisy and with Kimberly as directors were like, I hadn't worked with a lot of female directors up until Halt and Catch Fire. So it was really inspiring to me. And also they were so fun to work with. And I learned so much from them. So I just have to say a shout out to those two.
Daisy, the director of the episode, she was incredible at keeping everybody on track and cool. She was incredible.
It was I shadowed Juan for two different seasons. It wasn't planned that I was going to cut there too, but it just worked out so well that he happened to be shooting that oneer where I could actually, you know, maybe be of some use on set, and also I could be cutting it too to make sure that it was working.
And then we got to shoot with Lee Pace, who I had only really known from Pushing Daisies, correct? And I remember the one thing Barrick and I both recalled, we were like, God, he is a giant, handsome man.
He's beautiful.
He's
beautiful. And he's so tall.
He was massive.
And I think the first time we shot with him, he was wearing like a suit or something. But the second time we shot with him, he was wearing these Jordache jeans. And this isn't, this is like, I remember us looking at each other and going like, I normally wouldn't notice this, but he's got an incredible ass.
I think I remember you saying.
Lee and I would run lines a lot and we'd make them really silly. We would do them in accents and just try and like memorize them by making them funny to us. Just definitely an approach. But yeah, we would do them like really bad act them together to remember them.
Lee Pace is the best actor that I've ever acted with. Like Lee Pace is hands down, like gives me like, whoa, dude, when we're in scenes together, you know what I mean? Like hands down connected to material, like nothing I've ever seen.
And that's another day where I got to just like sit with Lee in front of me and chat. And he was like the most lovely, kind person ever.
Lee really liked the idea that I kept him in this leather jacket that looked like he was never ever going to get out of it, because it was like his armor, his protection for all this stuff that was going around him, sort of like a stabilizing force.
Lee's great. I really enjoyed working with him. Very fluid. All ideas, you know, we just explored all ideas. One thing I really liked working with him was the scene work. He really gave time to that. And in rehearsal, we talked about what these beats were, what they meant for the character emotionally. With him, there was a lot of work on how these characters were emotionally involved with each other.
Lee Pace, Joe, is extremely talented, so he can ad lib off the cuff whatever he wants to do. I mean, that's that. Working with him, you know, you see the next level of the, you know, of talent.
Lee is an incredible actor, and he was incredibly kind. And I think when you are coming into a show with stars in their own right, not only are they established on this show, but they are, Lee certainly had been in what,
Pushing
Guardians of the
Daisies. Well,
Galaxy and Pushing
yeah.
Daisies. And, I mean, I definitely knew his work and thought he was incredible. So for me personally, to have someone of that caliber then automatically treat you as a peer, and it's really, really, it's very self-affirming, and it just like I have nothing but really utmost respect for him as a performer and then as a person.
There was a scene where he comes into the house to meet Mackenzie's character, and he's got on where he looks like he'd been in the office all day. So he's got a suit on, and he comes in and he's got like a leather jacket on, he's got aviators on, and he comes through the door, his like jacket's like slung over his shoulder, and he's loosening his tie, and in like a one fell swoop he like loosens his tie and like lifts the aviators off and does this smile, and there was an audible gasp behind camera from like all the ladies on set, like me, hair, makeup, just any other lady crew members. Like everyone was just like, ah.
There was something about that show that just really resonated with me. Him getting his sort of second chance at life. That's what that show did for me. And a lot of that was because of Scoot, because he was championing me, and because of the working relationship that we had. I mean, he would talk to me about his process all the time. He's the kind of actor that he's not gonna walk across a room unless his character has a reason to. And he would, this is why I'm doing this. He would explain that to me. And I would do line readings with him. I would rehearse with him. I would do the off-camera lines, like if he's talking on the phone to somebody. And I just learned so much about what I know about acting from him.
Scoot was great because he got to tell me his story. He told all of us his story about how he ended up getting into acting. And I felt like that was really inspiring and gave me hope that, it could continue.
One of the most valuable things for me, I think, was being able to just be in the room when Scoot and Lee were practicing their craft, because they are two like powerhouse performers, and like to watch them work was such a big integral thing for me as an actor, to go like, these guys are so good at what they do.
Scoot was like more fiery, more like, not in everybody's business, but like approachable. Like everybody can go up to him, talk to him, like, whatever the case. And so he was definitely kind of around our group more.
It was really surreal to be like, oh, I'm going to deliver this line to Scoot, and Lee Pace. And it just, I love their work, and I still love their work. And when I see them now, I'm like, I can't believe I had that one line with them.
Just seeing how Scoot he made that set his own. I'll give you one little tidbit. If he would ask them, he'd go, do you see my feet in this shot? And they'd say no. And he'd go, okay. And he'd put his slippers on. And he would do intense scenes with Lee Pace and whoever else wearing his like little hotel slippers.
And I felt like I don't know that Mackenzie would say the same thing. I hope she better. But like I felt like we were really on the same frequency all the time. We agreed on stuff when we discussed the scene, when we were going through it. We just always felt on the same page. And the best time when you're doing those scenes with someone so closely, and not just the intimate scenes, but just someone you're with all the time, the most important thing is to not know what they're going to do, but to know that they're going to make a great choice. And that's what it was like working with her. She's an amazing actress.
Because that Mackenzie Davis is just such a heartfelt, good person, and then also a really great actress.
I met Mackenzie Davis, who I adore her. She's the sweetest person on set. She told me to she's the one who gave me the advice to always be careful about what you say while you're mic'd up.
Good advice.
Which I have taken to heart and has saved me many a times. But talking to her, she was like, did I wear those pants? And being able to have that connection really helped me to be able to look up to her in a very real world way in an unattached environment, you know?
Mackenzie was just amazing, like a live wire running through her that makes everything she does interesting. And she had a really sophisticated idea of who Cameron was and wasn't. I remember she had a note. I can't remember what episode it was, but I had her saying, I love you, maybe in like an offhand way or something to Boz or something, or one of the something. And she called and said, like, I don't think Cameron says I love you. I don't think she's comfortable saying that to anybody. Like, that was a choice she'd made, which I thought was interesting.
The whole cast, but Carrie particularly was a great joy to work with. She you know, for many reasons in the pilot, I realized that at one point I was paying much more attention to Scoot's character than to her, and it was basically because also she nailed it in the first take. You know, she nailed it all the time in the rehearsals, and I had to come to her and say, look, it's not that I'm not paying attention to you. It's just that you nailed it from the beginning. I don't have many notes to you because you don't need notes.
And I was like, did I just bow to Carrie in the middle? Like we were recording just now.
Carrie Bichet in particular, because I spent most of my time with her. She was a true professional, and I really admired her for her work ethic and everything.
I can't say enough about Carrie and Mackenzie. They are a blast to work with, formidable, very talented. We laughed a lot in between takes.
You know, Donna was like a demanding, exacting leader, but Carrie's like just a sweetheart. I just remember like her working so hard to make sure that all the connections, all like the little nuances, all like the fascia of the characters, like in their relationships, was like really being highlighted. And I think you can tell, like in the scene and just the show in general.
Oh my God, Carrie. One of the most memorable moments from her, I want to say it was the Mutiny Team's last episode. I think it was all of us. That was our last day. And after, I think she wrapped for the day, she gave the most beautiful speech, thanking all of us for all of our hard work. And I don't know if she knew what the future held for us, but it was just the end of us for that season. And it was the most heartfelt, kind, generous thing I've ever heard an actor say. And she didn't have to do that. I was like, wow, you really care about the people on this show, the people who are helping tell this story. Whereas a lot of actors would be like, you know, other actors who I'm working with, she really took that moment and stopped everything to give this like Oscar worthy speech. And it was so beautiful and kind. I was like, wow, this is how you should operate at that level. It's encouraging. It makes me want to be a better actor and show up with a specific energy if that's what you're pouring back into us.
Miss Carrie, I think, was kind of like a big mom figure on set too, because she gave us a lot of advice. And I remember her telling me, because she has like one of the biggest hearts in the world, and she's just so like, she's such a genuine, loving person. And like, she was truly like a second mom. Like, she was truly like comforting and loving and funny. And I had the most deep conversations I've ever had with a human being with her.
And Toby comes in. I didn't know Toby. I worked with him in college. I work with him. I will work with him in anything. Yeah.
I think Toby Huss is a very underrated actor. So
But he's such a raconteur, and he's always telling stories like, well, you know, I was down in the blah, blah, blah. And you're like, what are you talking about?
Toby, of course, just because of his sense of humor, and he also helped out with my writing like sketch comedy.
I had started outfitting him in his suits and all that. And we did the 3-piece suits, which Toby can rock them so great. And I had him in regular dress shoes. And then I got him some, what I call cha-cha heels, you know, the zipper boots of that time period that came out of the 70s. And the minute he put those things on, he was like, oh my God, this is Bosworth Walk. Like, he found the swagger of his character with those boots.
He actually, the mutiny hats that you see a lot of us wearing, that was his rap gift on season 2. He shows up at what we called the unofficial season 2 rap party, which is at one of the stand-ins houses. He shows up and we're like, oh my God, Toby's here. Like, nobody expected Toby to be there. There was like a lot of background people, a lot of the crew, that kind of stuff. And then Toby walks in with a box full of these hats and gives them to everybody. And so it was so cool. It's just such a good guy.
And I immediately, Toby has a thing about him, and you see it in the show. He's just such a likable guy. He's so charismatic. He's got a glint in his eye, a twinkle that you just, right away, you just like him.
And then Toby is like, you know, he's like a carnival barker. I mean, he's such an entertaining and lovely human being. We ended up hanging out quite a bit off screen, and he's kind of performing all the time in the best way possible. And again, just actors who really want to get into it and work. No egos, just kind of best idea wins.
Toby is very fun. I mean, like that, but that is also like, energy's coming on the set. You better be ready to catch it, because if you don't, like, you seem like such a jerk. Like, he's creating so much fun stuff, and that's, I mean, he can do it again and again till infinity, but each one is unique, right? And so if you miss it, you cost it. And so there is an extra level of, okay, I got to be ready.
Well, Annabeth is just so, like, civilized. Don't you want Annabeth to like you? I just do. I just want her to like me and approve, you know? I think there's something about Annabeth, you know, that makes me want to not disappoint her.
I mean, Annabeth Gesh is such a powerhouse performer, and just the most sort of down-to-earth, real actor, real fun.
That was when my relationship started to really, meld into something really special with Mark, because I found out that he was one of the silliest guys that I had ever worked with in any context. So in between takes where we were messing with this hardware, and I had these goggles on, and said that thing about cat people or whatever, and seeing half a boob or whatever. In between those takes that we were doing, Mark and I were just making these like crazy absurd jokes, and it was just me and him it was like taking to the next level these absurd scenarios of like what could happen in this scene, but like we were just dying laughing the whole time. And then we would go back into another take and then do this like thing where we're like, well, if we move this over here, and then so it's just kind of like, that's the thing that I remember most about that episode, oddly enough. Mark O'Brien was amazing. Such a joy to work with, and so fucking talented. And I was so thrilled that in season 4, I got to have that one scene with him, that I got to work with him one more time, because he's such a fun actor, and like Carrie, like he's really good at playing so many layers at once.
On set, I would bring my guitar sometimes, and like me and Nick and JB, who plays Robot, and we would sing songs and hang out.
Morgan had already
been into like music and learning like guitar and stuff, I think. And Alana, I think, was getting started. They might have to correct me on that, but that's what my memory is telling me. But so he was getting them into music, and my William, he's a musician and stuff. So they would all have their guitars, and then at the hotel he would be playing his guitar, and they would all be singing with him, and that was like their little jam session and everything. It's really cute.
We had this thing for a while called tape night where we would get together and watch 80s VHS tapes together.
Anytime someone asks me about Mutiny or brings up Mutiny, I'm like, hey, did you see the winner?
Like we would go to, like, I don't know, someone had tickets to we go to baseball games. I mean, there are people's houses. Some of us live near each other, and we, hang out.
And same with the guys in Mutiny, like Josh Hoover and Nick Pupo. Like, it was, I feel like I'm just going through the list of how great everyone was, but it's the truth. Everyone was really wonderful. Alexa Palladino and a lot of these people, like, I'm still good friends with, and try and see, like, anytime I can. And what a lovely thing to have. And I could just go on and on about how great they are as actors, but like everyone on that show was really good.
I think Josh Hoover does a great job as Bodhi, as being the sort of loud, crass. And then my dear friend Nick Pupo, who plays Carl, is kind of a little more snarky, but kind of more of a focused worker.
Cooper was great because turns out, like, on the first episode, first day on set, we found out that we're actually from the same small town in Jersey, which was wild. It was wild. Him and I really bonded over the next few years. Like, he let me sleep on his couch sometimes, and I eventually actually ended up living in his house, like, after he moved. So really great guy.
And another addition to season 2 was Mark O'Brien, who's so great. He was great. Yeah, and then all the Mutiny guys were so great. I'm still friends with a couple of them. And it was just, I don't know, the whole environment was just really warm.
Cooper.
Oh yeah, Cooper Andrews.
Yeah.
Who, funnily enough, had started in this industry as a boom operator. I think that actually, because I think we probably may have put him in this before Walking Dead. So he knew so many people in the industry, and he obviously like knew the set environments and knew acting from, what he had taken from being a boom op. But he moved into this space, and he's just so specific because he's this big guy and he's Samoan
and Josh Hoover.
Oh yeah.
Who's hysterical. Very funny.
Yeah, Nick Pupo. I think like just our
real character-y guys.
We knew for sure. Going in.
Yeah. We would laugh, like the thought of them saying some of the stuff we cast them to say, we'd start laughing when we even talked about bringing them in.
Yeah.
Manish, who played, what's his name? I met him the first day we rode from the airport together, and we really hit it off, and I didn't have any scenes with him, and kind of we hit it off, and then I just didn't really see him again until I watched the show. And I think he's so good in the show. He's such a special performer. I kind of wish I'd ever gotten to tell him that. I just like, he's a really lovely guy, and I'd never seen his work before. And I didn't really know much about what his trajectory would be. And so I didn't have much contact with him. And then I watched the show, and I think he's incredible.
The older version of Haley Clark, Susanna Skaggs, she hadn't really done a whole lot of episodic work. She was really involved in the drama department. I remember that, but she was just so authentically who she is that she didn't really have to there wasn't really, she didn't have to act. Like she was
she was just it.
She was just it and existing in the space.
She was fearless. Like she would shave her head. She was a fearless actor even at that age. And
they threw some pretty heavy themes her way.
Yes, they did.
Susanna,
just what a joy. Like such a lovely human being, such a beautiful, lovely, honest performance. And
just out of nowhere. Like, I remember we watched her audition in the writer's room, and you just love her immediately.
The commitment that every single person had to making it the absolute best thing it could be, starting with, I mean, the Chris's, obviously, this was like their baby. And then the actors, I mentioned this earlier, but we would get together and do our own table reads, and like it would be like a full day of rehearsal on a day off. People would be out of town and fly back early so that we could do these table reads, and they were like table read rehearsal work session, like 5-6 hours on a Sunday, and that is ridiculous. That's completely ridiculous. I can't imagine another group of people who would agree to do that in their free time. And it wasn't even just about like yourself. It was about committing to making the show as good as we could, and everybody kind of being on the same page. And that's like, I just think that's so unique.
The whole cast and crew were, it's not rare, but it's always appreciated when everyone behind the camera and in front work together in such good harmony, and are respectful professionals. You don't always get that. But this one was one of those examples that I couldn't say enough good things about. So I thank you to everyone who worked on it.
This team in particular are such great team players that you really never felt that there was any sense that the evolution wasn't one that we were all doing together. And that to me shows for both the humility and also the passion for all the cast members, all the writers, all the directors, and the producers to take this story the way it naturally wanted to go and bring it to this really, I think, beautiful conclusion.
Randy Havens, I don't even know if we shot together, but we were in the same episodes because he was with Gordon. Oh my God, Scoot McNairy. I haven't even said anything about Scoot. Scoot's one of the best humans. Like he'll like always just genuine, nice guy. But Randy's one of my best buddies from the show now. Eric, like, I wish I could just like give you an experience from every single person, because like it exists, even to backgrounds. Like we would go to Atlanta Hawks games together. We would go to Piedmont Park festivals together. You know what I mean? Like we would be on an episode for 2 days and have 8 days. So 6 days we'd be hanging out and 2 days we would be working, like, so we would find ways to spend that money.
Amy Lacey, our script supervisor, she is one of my favorite people. She is just, I can't even say enough good things about her.
I like, the PA, Sarah, Jamie, Jill. Yeah, I knew people who knew Sarah before the show, actually. That's how small Atlanta is. There's Iron and Warren. Warren was the first AD.
We could sit at lunch and talk about like, what you're working on, or show them footage and say like, hey, does this make sense to you? Does this scene work? Does it build in the right way? Because a lot of times, while they're shooting, you don't often, it depends on the director, but sometimes you don't talk to them. And so it's nice to have, you're not working in a vacuum because you have these other people that you can collaborate with.
We became friends. We shot on like a Monday, one scene, and then like the next Monday for another scene. So they just kept us in a hotel in Atlanta for a week, and we just hung out and we're still friends.
And it was actually, and we had 3 production designers over the course of the show who were all great, and it was actually awesome to bring different people on as sort of we jumped through different eras. So it felt incredibly distinct, because they were seeing the art aspect of the show through different eyes.
Mark O'Brien, like just Alexa Palladino, we talked about her for a little bit before. Like I could go on and on and on and on and on, all the way to the background, like Sam Lazarus. Like there's so many people that just Iron. I just want to say everybody's name to be like, I love these humans.
It is always exciting when someone has an idea, and even if it feels counterintuitive, one of the great things about that show was how brave we would be. Like some of the crazy ideas came from us, but sometimes they came from a writer or a director or the editor.
There's Eliana who did set dressing. Amy Blanc-Lassay who did scripting. I'm sure I'm missing people, but yeah, I do remember like all the crew.
The camera operator Glenn, he ended up DPing a show I did in Chicago called 61st Street, and he was a camera op then, and he became the DP, and he was phenomenal. I loved him. I loved him very, very much. He was just the greatest guy. And Jeff Freilich, one of the producers, I worked with him on that same series.
It did feel very much like a family. There's so many people I want to shout out. Like there was Yvonne in the makeup trailer, and then Billy Sullivan, the set medic. I wanted to shout out some of the background coders, like Wing, Zachariah Rogers, who's on P-Valley. He had a really great arc on P-Valley. Sam Lazarus. Oh gosh, and then the transpo people, Joe, Leona, Sherry. I miss everyone.
One of our costumers, Kate Abraham, who she was there the whole time. I mean, she was there from the pilot to the end of season 4, I'm pretty sure. And her husband had been in like a synth rock band in the 80s, and he had this like black and white promo photo with his full 80s hairdo and like a keytar, rockin' Ron Abraham, and that was up on the wall in the Mutiny House. Just a little Easter egg.
Yeah, Josh Gilbert was a second assistant from season 1, and he made it to Focus Puller, and he's the only camera department person that made it all the way through. Like we dragged him out. Like the camera department's changed, and almost every year until I maintained, and then Josh maintained. And he ended up being the camera Focus Puller. So like he made it the whole time.
A lot of it comes also from the technical consultants, which the show had. Carl Ledbetter was one of them, and you can look him up too. Just if you're at home or you're at work, if you're in the car, don't look it up right now. Why are you watching this in the car? Come on, this is the. Also, why are you watching this if you haven't watched the show? Come on, watch the show. Stop the interview. Okay, watch all these episodes, but do them on mute. Watch the show. And then come back, rewatch the podcast.
I mean, hair and makeup was always the best. We have Maurice and Evelyn, and I'm trying to think of everybody that we had. Like even the heads of the departments. I can't remember everybody's name right now, but like literally, it was hugs every time you walked in the door, and it was like, I'm so happy to be at this job today. Even the days when it was 100 degrees or snowing in Atlanta, like. It was the best.
This show we did 4 seasons with all the same actors, and it was like a real family. Like with Lee, Mackenzie, Scoot. Like I would hang out on the weekends with them. I went motorcycle riding with Scoot. Like Mackenzie came over to my house for Easter's. Like it was a real family feel on that show, which you don't. Like usually you're separated, right? And then all the actors lived in the house together. They rented one. They would always, Scoot. Lee and Mackenzie would always live together in some big house, and so like it was just more of a everyone just felt like this was their home, was to be here, it wasn't like everyone's out of town. It's like everyone's home.
But all credit to Glenn. He's a masterful camera operator. He's a masterful director of photography now, and he's a real gem to work with. So Halt and Catch Fire was lucky to have him.
We all just kind of liked each other, whether we were background or principal or like crew or the writers or anybody. Like it was just like everybody enjoyed being there.
Cameron Beasley, who was the art director for the episodic seasonal work for me for 1 and 2, and I want to say for maybe the whole show, maybe he stayed the entire time. And Lance Totten, who was the set decorator not for the pilot, but for seasons 1 and 2, and I think 4. I think he stepped away for a minute, but then returned to close things out. And they are wonderful people as well as very talented individuals.
The humanity behind the show means more than the show to me.
We had a great first AD in Townsend Wells, and Iron Kirkendall was the second AD, and like we had a lot of great people who were just like, because the show was so enjoyable that really tried to make it great.
it was one of my first experiences in Atlanta where I was an assistant director. We had a great staff of production assistants. Haley was in base camp. Jamie was on set. Keegan was with the extras. Jill was wonderful in every position that she did. Sarah was wonderful in every position that she did. We had a great connection. I had wonderful relationship with Diane, Doug, Warren Gray as well. And it was a great family.
You know, they didn't treat me like I was a teenager. They treated me like I was a peer, not in a inappropriate way, but like they just took me seriously, and listened when I spoke. And that was just like a great experience.
Iron Kuykendall, our second AD, I mean, he was so integral to especially season 2. He deserves a lot of credit. Everybody, so many people, Amy Lacey, our script supervisor, so many people were there for the whole ride. And you know, I could just go on and on naming people, but you know, everybody, it felt like everybody was working together to make something great.
Sasha is just one of the most lovely human beings on the planet and makes anything easier and just kind of effortless. I mean, just lovely, easy energy and so fun to work with on set.
Evans, he was one of our DPs. Glenn, camera, Steven, we lost Steven. Steven was like one of the most amazing humans, and just, I think he was like a nice Christian guy who just like felt like that energy of love and acceptance and godliness. I don't
Any
know.
directors that you really loved working with?
Larissa Kondracki, Daisy, Karin, all of them. Kimberly Pierce. Kimberly Pierce. Like, that's someone that I've ran into LA a couple times and have messaged her on Facebook, and we've gone back and forth, like Oscar winning kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Like, it's crazy to just get thrown in. The Chris's, the writers that we had.
The vibe on that show was just different than a lot of the other ones that I've worked on. And maybe it was because there was more women in the cast. I don't know. But I really had such a good time. And the rest of the cast too, like all those computer guys and stuff. Like, I still have a picture on my fridge of me and one of the guys from the rap party. And it's just like, it was such a good memory working on that show. That cast was just like so phenomenal. It was, everybody was gracious too, you know, there's no egos, attitudes, and it just felt like everyone was just kind of working so well together.
Steph and Jeff were wonderful leaders. The production office was always there to cover us. Any sort of disagreements you had with the accounting or the accountant or the clerk, you could go and wink and smile, and they would say, you know, it's not a big problem. Just put that paperwork in for me, sugar. And it was a great trip.
I will also say Catherine Newton that day showed me how to like navigate, and how she asked for bike shorts for me because I was wearing a short dress, and I was like, oh, I feel weird. I'm like all exposed and they have to go up under my dress and do the mic, and I don't know what, and she was like, oh, I'll just talk to a costume person and get you something. And then she did. And I was like,
I mean, I think establishing rapport was very easy on this show because I was so in awe of these actors. I thought they were all just, I mean, the talent, Lee Pace, it was just amazing. And Scoot McNairy and Mackenzie Davis, I mean, Carrie Bechet, all of them were absolutely incredible. And I was just a huge fan of theirs. So I'm sure I showed up with that kind of energy and my excitement to be working with them, and we were off.
So it was nice being able to, you know, have these newer actors learning from these senior actors in real time.
Christian and Chelsea are the main ones I want to shout out. Like, we really were a team during that. The experience of shooting it was an experience of getting to know and hang out with them. And my experience when I think about Halt and Catch Fire is first and foremost like being around a table with them.
And having really talented actors that you can always cut to
at any point, because they're always in the middle of a scene. They're always performing. There's always a reaction. There's always something telling about that character, because they really stay in character even when they're not the ones delivering lines. Really talented actors like that. Again, they kind of make my job a little bit easier, which is part of what made this job so much fun to do.
Kudos to Anna Klumsky, because she is a fantastic actor, and she just came in like, so spot on, and she really made it come to life.
It was such a treat as an actor to be able to watch these other actors, Mackenzie and Scoot and Toby. They're so phenomenal. Where there's moments where I forget, it's like, no, I'm playing a character. I'm not CJ, the actor, watching and learning from these other actors. Be Doggett right now. But it was a masterclass just watching how these named actors they operate and how they work and how they navigate through these scenes, and even work with the director. Scoot and the director, you could just tell there was a different relationship there, where it was way more collaborative, and his input was taken very seriously. And that was just amazing to see the level of care that he had for this story and the direction that it was going.
I have to give so much credit to Evans, who was my DP, and he we talked about it, but I'll just never forget that day, and the Steadicam operator moving with Scoot, and up ahead off to the side is Evans holding this little light. I mean, he's the DP, just holding this little light to and it just was, you want to talk about a collaboration. That scene is the best example of an incredible collaboration, where it's just one of my favorite things about my job, where ideas start building on ideas, and we all elevate each other.
It was also beautiful to watch Catherine Newton in that scene, who, unlike Susanna, had worked a lot and continues to work constantly. Still very young, but in so much control of her craft. Like, really impressive. I remember at the end of that scene, there was a camera angle that I don't think ends up in the show, but where they had a camera like move toward Catherine over the table as Donna's giving her toast and saying, "Kiss that baby every chance you get." And I could tell that she was aware of the camera, like its position, its proximity to her, and that I remember when they called cut, the camera operator was still moving toward her, and she knew that and knew to stay in the scene. And as the camera landed on her, like a tear dripped out of her eye, and I was like, this is insane that she's this. I mean, it was amazing.
The relationships I made with my co-star friends, Melanie Newby, Rob Branchow, Jim Namcom, Kate Nealon, Adam Bucci, we were all part of that little Comet team, but we actually got to know each other on the set and off the set.
There was end of first season party at Thomas' house, and Paul couldn't go because he already had a trip scheduled to Austria, I think. And I went there, and I didn't want anything. I just want to celebrate that we ended the season, and the boat didn't hit the iceberg. Right? It was actually great. And everyone was super nice to me there. They remembered me. They talked to me. And this was really nice.
I remember the crew, the cinematographer, and the crew of that show, honestly, were the they were special. I mean, they had everything rigged up in this studio, and I think it's the beginning of being able to, use an iPad and with Wi-Fi and control all the lights so quickly. So they could shoot things, and the directors could on the fly just decide to change setups, and they had so much flexibility. So I don't ever remember there being like a real hiccup or even being aware of the complexity of a shot.
They brought on a consultant. Maybe you heard Carl Ledbetter. I'm sure other people have mentioned him. And he did. I remember, like, maybe in the first month, he came into the writer's room and did an entire day session just teaching us the history of computers and computer engineering, the history of that in Texas, all the difference between like a PC clone, because I only use Mac. I didn't know anything. And that was incredibly helpful.
Hair and makeup, Donna and Teresa and the ADs, like, I mean, everybody really was like, I mean, I wish I could remember her name, but I remember, when we picked out Reese's glasses and, the watch that I wore, like there was just.
Are you thinking of
just all
Jennifer
these-
Bryan, maybe?
Yes. Okay. So all of those little details, costuming, I mean, everybody was just it's so nice and so complimentary and so good at what they do. And just, that was the vibe. That was the vibe on set.
In episodic directing, it's like everyone stays the same except the director. So when I stepped in, it's like the same DP who's incredible. Like, actually thinking back to this episode, it's like the wonderful people like memo is real. He's like one of the reasons it's like kind of so sharp in my memory as being a set that had wonderful people. Because not only was he just a great guy, but he's one of the most creative, just photographically one of the most creative people I feel like I've worked with, and at least in the context of making these TV shows.
Richard, Jen, and Melanie, and Wes, and Robert, and Susanna, and we all still are connected in a way. So it's very special to have that.
The casting directors on this show were phenomenal. They're so good. They've done so many great things.
It was just a very bonded group, and I think that comes across in how much acting is going on when they're not even talking. Like, they really understand each other. You feel like they're really attuned to each other in an ensemble way that you don't always have in TV casts.
It might have been Lee, but they would have dinners all the time. Definitely when we got the script or got the new script, they would have a dinner and the whole cast would come over, and just on our own. I've never been on another show where the cast did that, and we got together and we would read it a couple times and have dinner, and just, it makes such a huge difference because you become so much more comfortable with people, and that in acting, you have to be comfortable and be willing to fail in front of people. And the more friendship there is, the easier that becomes. So that was really special, and I'll always remember that.
We got to spend a lot of time like singing and playing guitar and all of that stuff, and that really changed me.
Maurice was actually doing hair for background, but he became the person who I would go to Maurice every time I came to set, and just to know that that person was there for me and I was taken care of in that way. Super cool. He was such a nice person. I think we're still Facebook friends.
Our hair and makeup department were led by women, and also of a certain age. They weren't teenagers. They were women of wisdom. And I always feel like it's just, with age and maturity comes some knowledge, that isn't thrown away. So I very much appreciate the entire set, and Jeff Freilich, our producer, Steph Aceta. I mean, it's just amazing humans who I'm still very good friends with.
But it was a full 8 hours with pretty much just me and Monty Schuth, I think is his last name, doing my hair. And they kept like sending pictures. It would be a process of we would do it, and there might be a 15-minute period where they'd send pictures off to production, or you'd have like a director come in and look at it to see if they liked it.
Kimberly Adams, the costume designer. She was actually doing a costume fitting with Kimberly is so cool because she wants you to move around in the costume. She wants you to feel it out. She wants you to inhabit the character as you're in whatever, in whatever different costume she has you in, just to go like, does this work? Is this you?
They came in being Blue Man Group and they do that whole thing. We didn't even, they do it incognito. I don't know how they got that thing on that vinyl thing on their faces, everything. They showed up and then all of a sudden there they were. So that was their own, yeah.
They did their own process.
Can I see how you get the, nope. Trade secrets,
proprietary information. Oh my goodness.
She gave them to me. Is it gonna blur?
How do we? It's blurring. Oh my god, that's so appropriate.
Here.
Let's see. Nope, it's cheap. Yes. Oh my god.
So there's me. There's the whole photo. And then this is the underwear. And as you can see, she lined it. And now I have these framed in my hallway.
On the gallery photo shoot was one of those rare days when all the actors are photographed in, because you have so many different A stories and B stories, right? So the day of the gallery photo shoot, I thought it was so exciting, that shot that they did in the office environment. And, Carrie's just like, popping that, I think it was that red and white skirt, and then you see Boz in his little tweed sports jacket, and you actually, I felt so good about that because right there in that composite portrait for the poster, you could see the individuality of each of those characters all at once.
The music on the show, which is, I can't say enough good things about the music. The score, Paul's score throughout is just extraordinary and perfect for the show. But also Thomas Golubic, who I have had the very good fortune of getting to work with many times. I mean, he was on Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, and he was on The Walking Dead when I was there, and he was on this. And he and his team they approach things from a perspective that most music supervisors just don't. They approach it from a depth of understanding of story and character and emotion and I know I don't want to be too redundant about what Rob said, but a lot of times music supervisor will just send you some songs, or they'll send you like 1,000 songs. They go, figure it out. Thomas and his team, they go through and they'll present very specific songs, and they'll say, and here's why. And they'll give you options, and they're almost always great options. So then it's the difficulty of choosing your best great option. I can't say enough good things about Thomas and his team. They're genius for real.
I think it was really nice because Thomas, the music supervisor, was super good at being very direct in the guidance to me. Sometimes people are saying, yeah, maybe we like this atmosphere, or maybe try to do something that feels a little bit blue or something. He was very much like, we like the synths, we like the tempo, we like this and that, and that made it very easy for me to be totally 100% sure what they wanted. So that was also why the process went so well, I think, because they really knew what to ask for, and they talked to me in musical terms.
I was always incredibly grateful because it was so meaningful to me that My Little Baby song
was Haley's.
Oh, they gave me a Polaroid on my first day as like a first day of filming gift. Me and Catherine got a Polaroid. She taught me how to take it, and how to load the film and all of that. So all those like little 90s touches, I was like able to be like, what is this?
She worked with me to like find some earrings that would like go well at the time. And so these are some of the earrings that I had, and I still use them to this day.
The rockets didn't work. So they were having the hardest time getting these things to launch at all. That when you actually do see all of the rockets launch, that's actually 2 or 3 different takes, and we've just kind of used visual effects to stitch a frame together so it looks like they're all shooting up at once.
I couldn't believe I was there getting paid to play laser tag with some guys I consider friends.
They had a fake moon that they like inflated and like were hung over the yard so they would cast the right glow out the window, and it was just like pulling up on set and just seeing, you know, this fake moon, inflatable moonlight, and I'm just like, whoa, this is amazing.
The detail that set put into it, and then walking around on set, specifically in the apartment, and being like, oh my gosh, I totally remember my family had a couch like that. Like, I remember that, you know, and then there were plates and stuff that I was like, my grandparents had those plates.
It was a pencil holder in the shape of a coffee cup with Rocko's Modern Life, but it wasn't a coffee cup. Like it wasn't the material. You would not want to use that as a coffee cup. And I specifically remember that as a kid.
Like the Mutiny set, I remember the first day that I walked on it, was, you know, when I went for my episode, and the detail on that set was just unbelievable. Like, just hats off to the set decorators and production designers and all of the period specific stuff on the walls, but also the way that all the wires and everything that was there was so carefully thought out and chaotic and wonderful to look at. I just, you're really lucky when you get to work on a show like this. That's all.
Joshua Hoover, who we know, he was writing all of the name tags down, and I think he was just being a silly Billy on the day. And I could be wrong, but he seemed like he was coming up with unique things for everyone. And he gave me, we actually did a couple different takes where he wrote different names for me. And I still have, believe it or not, on an envelope in my room, the Moon Chaser name tag. I just kept it because I thought it was cool.
They brought in these like rocket masters for props. Like, it wasn't just the art department, it was a group of just like dudes who love rockets.
I remember being very impressed with the set, because when you're reading a script and it goes, oh, you're in a convention hall, but it's a relatively small TV show. How are they going to pull this off? Like, do you have to set up a whole convention? And then we walked in and it was beautiful. Like, they did scene extensions, the little green screen here and there, but they had this whole beautiful set filled. And I was just thinking that, oh, the production designers had to probably come up with 50 different 1980s fake logos, and they came up with brochures. Like, they had to build this entire world. And then even down to our scene where there are these lighters, all with Sprinter, and they had to come up with the logo. It's so funny. Like, the amount of work that needs to be done when a writer just says, this is a convention. But they did such a beautiful job of the whole thing.
But that was fun. I'm like, we built these rockets for like for so long. It was a whole art department. It's like, who can do it and who can do it better? And we designed it, and it worked. I think it worked, and it was one of those moments. Is like, that's why we in this business. It's just so much fun.
There's a lot of soda being consumed, and Ranger Orange is a completely fictitious brand of soda, but we styled the packaging correctly enough so that people were thinking, is that a real thing? Is that just like a local Texas soft drink?
You know, there were so many like cool things in that house that they had, like set deck had, you know, like the mannequin, the girl with the bikini on. Like I have so many good photos. I have so many photos of Grips, like either posing and putting their arm around her, kissing her, or like, you know, or, and it's funny because she would always have on like a different hat or I think it was a sombrero one time. And then like her bikini changed. And then like one time she was topless, you know, it was just like a constantly like, we put money in her G-string, you know, it was just like constant kind of like, and I think that's why like that was such a good memory for me, was because like I really did enjoy working with that crew.
Yeah, I mean, you walked in, it was like you're in another world. Because the set was so big. And so immersive. You know, there's a scene where Joe sets I think it's like a book, like a BIOS book. I think that's what it is. And he sets it on fire. And I remember Pete like looked at me before we shot the scene, and he points up and he's like, we got to make sure they turn these sprinklers off. And I like look up and I'm like, Pete, do you think those are real?
I mean, it just was attention to detail on the desks. Like, you might not have even seen the stuff that was on some of the desks as a viewer from home, but like everything down to the, you know, the whatever's on your, you know, at work, you think of like little tchotchkes or whatever you say, like they were all just time period correct, like paper clip dispensers and the way the computer looked, or mouse pads or notepads or business cards. Everything was very period. And it was just really neat to see that attention to detail.
It's just like small attention to detail. Like I think of like her stapler or her colored pens. Like I don't remember exactly what it was on the desk, but it was specific to Debbie. Like somebody thought about it to like when I get to work, like when I go do a scene where I'm at my desk, I have all these options of like things to play with, you know, like the pens and the stapler and the Post-its that feel very like I didn't have to ask for that. That was just there. And then I feel like that informed me like even further.
Kept walking, and it was like The Walking Dead because I was on an empty freeway in Atlanta, staring at the downtown skyline, walking alone on a snow-covered 8-lane freeway.
We had a snowball fight with Scoot McNairy and Carrie Bechet and Mackenzie Davis, and like it's so weird because like to us that was just growing up. That was just like our play dates.
It snowed in Atlanta and we had the time of our lives. Like we were throwing snowballs at Scoot. we were just everyone like they were the best. They would like play with us, and we were having a little snow day, and that is like a really fun memory for me, just because we didn't get to do that. Like we didn't get to see snow.
Because I started with episode 2, which was New Coke. I was there in Atlanta on set for the entirety of prep and the entirety of shooting. And Juan and the Chris's and Melissa just gave me full access to everything. Like I was there at every casting session. So I was there when all the different actors were auditioning to be the mutiny coders. And then as they all sort of like got narrowed down and were all brought in again for like a chemistry read. You know, that was like Nick Pupo and Joshua Hoover and J. Elijah Cho. And it was just amazing to get to experience that.
The original ad for the show was "The Battle for Control Begins." And the cast made t-shirts at the end that said "The Battle for Control Ends."
Once we all left that show, we felt like we were really spoiled, you know, because every other job that I had gotten after that just never felt as special.
I can't believe you guys are still watching it and still talking about it. It means so much to me that the show continues to live, and it's just incredibly moving, and thank you. Thank you for, you know, finding so much value in it.
You know, working on Halt and Catch Fire was one of the great joys of my life.
It's a good memory in my career, for sure, that I'll never forget that show.
I really do consider this one of the best things I ever got to be a part of. and, and to work on. And so for me personally, it just stirred up so many happy memories.
At the end of the entire show, when the whole show wrapped, and we went for like a final dinner where the Chris's sort of treated everybody to a final farewell dinner, and there were toasts and there were tears. So this was an unusually emotional job. Not that we, sat around blubbering all the time, but we had this feeling that we had left it all on the field, which is a very gratifying kind of a feeling as writers, that we had really kind of given it our all, and been very open with each other. And that because of that, there was a real love.
Hoping for the best, and 16 episodes later is one of the best experiences of my life, and some of the best humans. I absolutely loved working on this show so much.
I was delighted to do it, and it remains, pound for pound, I think, my happiest professional experience. It just worked on every level.
I want to also say that Halt and Catch Fire was the greatest experience that I've had in my career. It was just such a wonderful family to be a part of, and I got to spend 3 seasons, 3 years working with the same people.
We officially wrap, and it was always so emotional for us, like wrapping our episodes. But they come out, they're all clapping, and they bring us these like scrapbooks, each one of us, and it was these giant scrapbooks, and it just, every single person that we've ever met on set, every single person that we've ever talked to, that we've gotten to know, that like everyone we love had written in that scrapbook and had Polaroid pictures and put together this beautiful like display of just all the memories we've ever had throughout set. And each person wrote a handwritten note, and we were totally surprised with that. And like, oh, it makes me emotional to this day, just like oh gosh, I look through the book like from time to time, and I'm just like flooded with emotions. It's like the sweetest thing ever, and like the most amazing keepsake I could ever ask for. And that was a really, really special moment for me and Alana. Just like they took the time to do that for us.
Why does this shit keep happening to me?